Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start by thanking our hosts and their partners for making this important event possible. Tonight, the spotlight is on the global goals and on a number of outstanding role models. The global goals adopted by world leaders 2 years ago are changing the world and the way we are understanding global politics. The 17 goals have put development issues right on the heart of high politics for the first time in history. These goals are now the main track for addressing the precious and pressing issues of our time. And whether or not all the political leaders understood this is only by the working to achieve the global goals that we can find sustainable solutions to problems like conflict, terrorism, forced migration, youth employment, all of those issues we as politicians are discussing every day. This is the path for the world's future. And the global goals can also be powerful tools for all of those seeking to hold political leaders accountable. And you should keep us accountable for what we are doing. And I'm delighted that President of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, is here tonight. She is the first democratic elected female president in Africa. She is a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. And the first time I met her was in 2012, before I became Prime Minister. I visited Liberia together with representatives of the Norwegian Refugee Council. President Sirleaf was hardworking, rebuilding Liberia after years of civil war. And I was impressed by what I was seeing them doing. But despite the challenges her country was facing at that time, over 160,000 people who had fled civil war in the Ivory Coast were registered as refugees in Liberia under President Sirleaf's watch and were helped to maintain their living and possibilities for the future. And I would also like to highlight the strong leadership she showed during and after the Ebola outbreak. I really understood that this was a lonely political leadership. When my Minister of Foreign Affairs came back to Norway and said, because he had gone to Liberia together with the Brits, and said that they have told that there had been no political leaders visiting Liberia for months because of the fear of the outbreak. It was the first time they had met political leaders from other countries. But the achievements made during the Ebola outbreak made it possible for systematic analysis to be carried out, which in turn led to initiatives like CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovation, thus helping to strengthen our global epidemic response in the future. And I am thrilled to have Ellen Johnson Sirleaf on the board as a champion of CEPI in the future, because we need people who really know what it means to lead a country through some of the worst experiences you can have. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think you all have realized by now that President Sirleaf is a woman of action, someone who recognized the importance of results, and it's a great pleasure for me that I present the Goalkeeper Award to President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Thank you very much. Please.
evening. Thank you. I wish to congratulate all the Goalkeeper awardees to say how their achievement is so inspirational. I accept this award on behalf of the Liberian people who have given me the opportunity to lead the effort for the rebuilding of a destroyed nation. When we embarked in 2006 on the rebuilding, the reconstruction of our country, the challenges were indeed awesome. Just think, no lights in the capital city for over 2 decades, broken roads, bridges, schools, clinics, hospitals, water, young children afraid. For too long, they had heard guns that made them run. The women struggling to put food on the table, struggling to ensure that whatever education existed, they would have an opportunity, the means to send those kids to school. Youth of our country having been bypassed by an education and skills because of 2 decades of conflict. Surely, where do you start? How do you move? But we were able to bring hope, to say people can take control of their own lives. And so we mobilized our people with great resilience, great commitment, great dedication to empower themselves, to take support from others, which indeed was quite needed and quite useful and quite effective, but to also get on with the job themselves. Today, we've come a long way. We've done a lot of the restoration. We've laid the foundation for growth. And in fact, we're doing quite well until we hit that deadly disease. And all the gains we had made by the end of 2013 had all disappeared. Not in terms of the physical infrastructure, that's still there, that's still being improved, but the hope, the growth, the commitment, because here we were facing an enemy that they did not know, they could not hear, they could not see. That was the greatest challenge we faced. Our first reaction in the midst of doctors dying, nurses dying, people dying by the hundreds every day, was to start a process of restrainment to ensure that we kept people from moving around. That did not work. And we then realized that the best way to solve a problem is to put the problem in the hands of the people themselves. And so we mobilized our communities that took charge. They became the first responders, the one to give advance notice of a sick condition, the one to move from home to home, from area to area, from community to community, passing words, putting the guards, starting the process. And I took upon the task of trying to revive the hope to combat the fears of our healthcare workers by going into the clinics and hospitals myself in the rural areas and all over the country, sitting with them, because people were dying not only from the disease, but dying from fear of going for help to a clinic, for fear that they would get contaminated from that. But together we were able, with the resilience and the commitment of our people, to beat the prediction that said 1 million of our people would die within a period of a year. We did have a lot of deaths, over 4,000 of them. But we can say that, thank God, we were able to effectively act, to effectively combat that disease. And I think I owe a lot to the Liberian women. If there's anything that inspired whatever we've been able to do, was to say, what do we do about women, the ones that really hold the nation up, the ones that provide the basic sustenance of life for the nation. Women who needed a better place to work, more comfort. Women who did not have an education but were so willing to go to literacy classes after sitting in the market all day. Women who learned to read and write for the first time in their lives. Today, as we move forward to the transition, a political transition, having served the country for over 11 years and will be turning over in January of next year, I applaud our women who really stood the test of time. Today, as we move forward, all eagerly awaiting this transition that has not taken place in our country for some 70 years, the more enthusiastic are the women. And for the first time, we have 164 women competing for positions in the parliament, a first in our country. We owe it all to our people, to our citizens, and we owe it all to you, our friends. The many of you in this room whom we know personally or got to know through your work, through your operations, through your support, your consideration, your encouragement, and your advocacy. Because of that, we've been able to come a long way. And Liberia can say with great confidence and great pride that the past is behind us, that we can now move forward and claim our rightful place in the Committee of Nations. Thank you all for being there with us. Thank you all. And thank you for this award, which gets a major place in my memoirs and in my library. Thank you so much.